Canelo Alvarez versus Edgar Berlanga. His fight's coming up. It's coming up on I think it's the 15th, right?
The 14th.
14th, next Saturday from when we're recording this right now, so we're doing it in advance. Just some fun facts on the fight going into it. Alvarez is 61-2-2. He hasn't gotten a knockout or TKO in 3 years, which is wild to me. Canelo's very much in his Mayweather era of not really get his Kamaru Usman, his Israel Adesanya era of not really getting as many finishes as he used to. Berlanga, New York native, Puerto Rican, 22-0, but hasn't had many big wins. This is a huge step up in competition. The first thing I want to ask before we even get into predictions, you are one of our premier boxing experts and covering it for the site on Ringside Intel. Like, give me a reason why. Give the people that are maybe they're like the independent voter in this upcoming election. They like Canelo, but they know his fights haven't been as interesting lately. He just fought Jaime Munguia. Why should a fan feel that Berlanga is any different and any more of a threat to Canelo than Jaime Munguia was?
Well, I think he brings a different mindset to the whole thing. But we've seen guys with different mindsets step up to Canelo and eventually sort of whimper out toward the distance. Yeah. And Berlanga could fall into that same category. We just haven't seen him do anything like that as of yet. We've seen Berlanga's taken some punishment over his career. He's been dropped and cracked and everything and still come back to win. So I think just that sort of live underdog feel is probably the biggest selling point for Berlanga, if you ask me. But at the end of the day, we're talking about an undefeated fighter who's making a name for himself. Obviously, the man is a professional boxer without any defeat. So that means he probably knows how to fight and he might be good at punching people. So he could punch Canelo and Canelo could get hurt from said punch. So, I think that's a good enough selling point. It's a fight. Anything can happen.
And that's kind of the sad state of Canelo's career. And, he can do whatever he wants. He can fight whoever he wants. It's his party. He gets to do what he wants to. But it's a sad kind of point for such a guy that really was on a trajectory to kind of just being one of the most beloved fighters, not only of his era, just of all time. Unique record, so many fights. He has the same kind of traditional Mexican style of fighting, but even elevated to that elite level. And now he's just at this point where he's just fighting winnable fights and getting as much money as possible. And it just seems like avoiding the toughest fights. And it's like that Triple G, those first two fights have just completely changed how he approaches boxing. And it's not as fan friendly as most would hope. And that's where we're going. We have to look at puncher's chance to be interested in a Canelo fight, especially when going back to what we're going to talk about later with pay-per-view prices, these aren't cheap events. This is an expensive event to hope we get a competitive fight. And with Munguia, we got something solid, but in the end, he pulled away from Munguia, made that interesting. I guess I'll go with my prediction first. I hope it happens that I hope Canelo gets a finish. Hopefully he, at least he gives the fans that are in attendance that do plunk down their money to watch this. I think he will. I don't think Berlanga is as good as Munguia. I think Munguia is a tougher fighter and, a little bit more skilled. And like you mentioned with Berlanga, this is a guy that can be hit. And I just feel like this is almost perfectly set up for Canelo to finally get a finish and an emphatic one and maybe quiet some of the doubters about his place in the pound for pound, stuff like that. I'll go 10th round TKO for Canelo. How are you seeing this fight play out?
I'm going to follow Canelo's blueprint here. I was at one of the pre-fight press conferences in Los Angeles where he said he wanted this to go to the 8th round, and that's where he was going to look for the finish. I believe he gets it done just like that. Like Berlanga, as tough as he is, that sort of mentality I think will be his downfall here. Where Munguia and like Charlo, where they were able to make it to the distance because they felt that power initially, and then they kind of go into more of a shell. And and then becomes like this race to survive to the end. I don't think Berlanga is going to have that, and that's what's going to open him up to something devastating landing. But I do want to give you a little bit of pushback on Canelo's career trajectory as of late. I don't think it was the Triple G fights that changed him. I think it was the fight against Dimitri Bivol. He was really, really chasing greatness there. And I think no matter what his fights look like now, we're still talking about one of the best to ever lace up a pair of gloves and still has an exceptional record and has this resume of all these great names. he chased greatness a little too high. He flew too close to the sun against someone like Bivol and paid the price for it. And I think after that experience, it sort of changed the way he looked at it. When you're still one of the biggest stars in sports, not just in combat sports, in sports period, and you can command top dollar, well, let's keep the gravy train running as long as we can. I think he's earned that at this point in his career.
He has, and I don't want to take away from his places as a legend, but man, I feel like he's kind of a what if in that he had the talents of the elite fighters like a Juan Manuel Marquez and Julio Cesar Chavez, but he had the matinee appeal of a Oscar De La Hoya. He had the best of both to be a legitimate superstar, and he is a legitimate superstar, but unlike those guys, he's not fighting the best of the end. That frustrates me. And trust me, as a die-in-the-wool De La Hoya fan, there was a lot of fights I wish he would have won, but I respected to the end that he fought Hopkins, he fought Shane Mosley, he fought bigger guys, he took on bigger risks. Pacquiao, he fought like Pacquiao, Mayweather, Bernard Hopkins in like his last 4 or 5 fights. Yeah. It was like 3 of the best ever.
Guys. Yeah,
he fought everybody, and he lost. It is what it is. It's just frustrating because in the end, Canelo still has had some prime years, and we didn't get to see him face the best of the best. And if he fights a David Benavidez or a Terence Crawford now and somehow lost, it'll be like, he probably wasn't as prime, but he's a little older. It's like, just missed opportunities. And those always frustrating.
I mean, this is sort of the state of boxing in and of itself. I mean, look at who Alvarez sort of built his star off the back of, and that's Floyd Mayweather. Like Mayweather has set the blueprint, but this is how you make the most amount of money. This is how you keep things going for as long as possible. And Alvarez borrowed some from that playbook, but he still goes out there and gets it in. Like it may not be exactly what it looked like before, but it's not, Mayweather's defensive exhibition. As wonderful as the skills are to be able to do that, like he's still going in there and taking risks inside of the ring, even if it's not against the absolute best of competition.